Good morning, everyone, on this first Sunday of Lent 2021. Can you believe that it is Lent already again? Yes, it was just immediately after the beginning of Lent last year that the COVID crisis descended upon our world, and we immediately learned a hard Lenten lesson. We had to suddenly give up a lot of things that we cherish, including gathering for worship. At that time, I think we all hoped that the isolation would not last very long. In fact, I thought maybe it would be around 40 days, the literal meaning of the word quarantine, and that it would serve as a reminder of the 40 days that Jesus spent in the wilderness at the beginning of his ministry. But here we are, a year later, still more or less isolated from one another. But surely we feel more hopeful at this time than at any time in the past year, with vaccines being administered as quickly as possible and the rates of infection, hospitalization, and death going downward. While we're all understandably shy about making predictions, many folks now believe that sometime this year we will be able to return to a more or less normal life. I certainly hope so. I know that one thing that this period of isolation has taught me is that I will never, ever again take for granted the opportunity of worshiping with my Christian brothers and sisters. As it is, this ongoing isolation and deprivation continues to serve as a very real reminder of the original 40 lonely days that Jesus spent in the wilderness. The gospel portion of today's lectionary is from the book of Mark. I want to read just 3 of the verses from chapter 1 that relate directly to the tradition and practice of Lent. Verses 9, 12, and 13. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And the Spirit immediately drove him out into the wilderness. He was in the wilderness 40 days, tempted by Satan, and he was with the wild beasts, and the angels waited on him. These few words are the biblical basis for the observation of the season of Lent. In this passage, we are not directly commanded to follow the example of Jesus, but the observance of a 40-day period prior to Easter is an ancient tradition mentioned in the documents of the Nicene Council of 325. Though not mentioned in the New Testament either, it is likely that Christians very soon after the New Testament days began to mark many of the seasons and holy days that we now observe, among them something that eventually became our Lent. So we have 40 days that we set aside each year leading up to Easter to give us in some small way a chance to participate with Jesus in this period of intense sacrifice and trial that preceded his public ministry. It is fitting that many people practice some form of fasting or voluntarily give up something that is a part of their lives in recognition of Lent, while others use the 40 days as a time to focus on spiritual discipline and growth, reading a portion of the Bible or using a daily devotional book throughout the period. By whatever means, I challenge each of us to mark this time so that we can experience the joy that comes from walking alongside Jesus in every way that we can. I want us to use a very distinctive Lenten hymn today, and it may be a hymn that is unknown to many of us. This is a hymn that I never sang when I was growing up, and we may have used it a time or two during Lent here at First Christian in the past 9 years, but that would be all. It is a specifically Lenten hymn that serves to teach something about Lent, to give thanks to Christ for his 40 days of fasting and prayer on our behalf, to pray for personal strength, to seek Christ's presence, and to look forward to the end and goal of Lent, which is, as the writer puts it, the Easter of unending joy. This hymn is called Lord, Who Throughout These 40 Days by Claudia F. Herneman. It has been published in dozens of hymnals over the past century and might be found in almost any hymnal that you have on hand, a Lutheran, Presbyterian, Episcopalian, Methodist, Moravian, or one of many others. If you have a chalice hymnal, it is hymn number 180. And I have attached to my email today a PDF of that hymnal page so that you can print it out for reference if you don't have a hymnal. These words serve beautifully as both an educational and a devotional hymn. This dual purpose of the hymn springs from its very origin. The writer originally published it in a children's hymnal, so it was literally intended to teach basic Christian tradition and thought on the season of Lent and to guide young minds into appropriate prayer during Lent. Even if we're not children, we can surely benefit from this kind of helpful words. The author's name was Claudia Frances Herneman, the daughter of an English clergyman. She was born in 1838 and was married in 1858 to an English clergyman, J.W.D. Herneman. And that's pretty much all that's known about the personal life of this lady. But she wrote more than 150 hymns. A great many of them were hymns for children. And she also made some excellent translations of hymns from the Latin. This hymn first appeared in her book, The Child's Book of Praise, a Manual of Devotion in Simple Verse, which was published in 1873. Over her lifetime, she produced 7 such books, most of them devoted to a particular season of the church year, such as Advent or Christmas, or to one of the rites of the church, such as baptism or communion. She wrote hymns not only for the well-known holy days, such as Christmas and Easter, but also for Palm Sunday, Trinity Sunday, Ascension, and many others. Her simple and meaningful poetry must have aided untold thousands, if not millions, of English children in coming to understand the seasons and traditions of their Christian faith. The tune is much older than the words and is of unknown origin. It appeared in a book of English hymn tunes published in 1562, but it is much older than that. The tune is similar in form to a medieval chant, and the harmonization also echoes some ancient traditional ways of ornamenting a tune for choral singing. The words have been sung to other tunes, but this is the most commonly used one, and this is the one that appears in our chalice hymnal. So I want you to join with me and Belinda in singing this hymn and preparing our hearts for the season of Lent. Thanks be to God.